بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا ومولانا محمد الصادق الوعد الأمين وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه الغر المحجلين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وعملا متقبلا يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت يا حي يا قيوم تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا سهلا. لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك اللهم ونتوب إليك. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to our 8th class on the Fiqh of Salah from the book Nur al-Idaah of Imam Abu Ikhlas Hassan ibn Ammar al-Shrumbulali rahimahullah ta'ala wa radi anhu wa nafa'na bihi wa bikum ameen. I'm joined by Hassan. So, Assalamu alaikum, Hassan.
Walaikum assalam, Shaykh. You okay?
Yeah, alhamdulillah. How are you? How's Ramadan?
Alhamdulillah, very good. Ramadan so far, so good.
MashaAllah, excellent to hear. Are we ready for the class today?
Bismillah, ready, Shaykh, ready.
Okay, Bismillah. So we were on the section on that which is disliked in prayer. In the books we have, it's page 198. If you have the PDF, it might be slightly before, but it's a section that which is disliked in prayer. So as normal, Hassan will be reading the points, and then we'll commentate on each one as we go along. And questions are welcome. You can put them on the YouTube chat, inshallah ta'ala. Barakallahu feekum. So over to Hassan. We can start. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. That which is disliked in prayer. 77 things disliked in prayer. It is disliked to intentionally omit a wajib or a sunnah practice, such as the fidgeting with one's clothes or body.
Yeah, so first of all, it is makruh to leave that which is wajib or sunnah. But before we carry on, the first thing we need to do to introduce this whole topic is to introduce the concept of makruh and what is disliked. And then we can make more sense of the following discussions, inshallah ta'ala. So when we say makruh, disliked, we mean it's not a haram like the haram is, and leaving something which is a must avoid. And we're not saying it's like leaving a permissible matter. If you do something permissible or leave something permissible, it doesn't have a dislike to it. We're saying it's in between. So there's things which are haram and things which are allowed, not necessarily not recommended, just allowed, like walking, things like this. We're talking about the prayer, of course. So in between that which is allowed and not a problem and that which is haram, there's certain levels of dislike. Not do it. So you shouldn't be doing something, but it's not haram necessarily. It's really bad to do. It's not good to do. It's disliked to do. It's better avoided. So these lots of terms used for this area, if you like, between that which is allowed and that which is completely and absolutely haram. Like this would be, a major sin and haram and so forth. And towards the top of that, meaning the worst things to do and therefore severely disliked, as they're called, like prohibitively disliked, are the makruh tahriman. So we've got two categories. Makruh tahriman means that which is really close to haram, and in terms of not doing it is the same ruling. You've got to avoid it. It's actually required for us to avoid it, but it's going to be called makruh tahriman, just below haram. And to the bottom of that, you've got makruh tanzihan, meaning it's better to avoid. Tahriman means prohibited. So makruh tahriman means something that's prohibited, but I'm going to classify as disliked. And tanzihan means to avoid is better. To stay away from is cleaner, if you like. Tanzihan is purer. So staying away from such things is makruh tanzihan. As we're going to go through all of these, and even in the beginning, the author has put together everything really, and he said it is disliked tahriman and tanzihan to intentionally omit a wajib. Wajib would be one of those 18, 19 things we discussed. such as reading the Fatiha, reading a surah with the Fatiha, posing in your bowing and prostration, doing things, reciting the tashahhud, sitting down after every 2 rakats, doing things in the order, not delaying one part to another part, reading the qunut in witr. So there's certain wajibat talked about. Omitting any of them would be a makruh tahriman. If done so deliberately, would be sinful. Like we said, it's like it's bad. It's like the haram. You can't do it, and it would require a repetition of the prayer as well. If a wajib is omitted unintentionally, it says that it's just like to intentionally omit. But if it's done unintentionally, I missed something wajib unintentionally, then we can make up for that mistake by performing a prostration of forgetfulness, which we'll explain later. And then it says to omit a sunnah practice. This would then lower the disliked level from tahriman to tanzihan. So as we're going to go through these points, some of these points will be makruh tahriman, like you shouldn't be doing these at all, and doing them is really bad and even sinful. And then some will be, but they won't break your prayer, right? That's what we're talking about here. That with things which are disliked and don't break the prayer. Okay, so these are things that won't break the prayer, because we talked last time about what breaks and doesn't break the prayer. Now we're talking about what's disliked in the prayer, what's not disliked in the prayer, what's recommended sunnah. We've been through as well. So it says such as fidgeting. So give an example of things which are disliked, such as fidgeting with one's clothes or bodies, right? So fidgeting with one's clothes or body is a disliked act of salah. And we're now going to go, so that's just the initial introductory statement to the section. Now we're going to go through specific points, inshaAllah ta'ala. So bismillah.
Okay, next one. So just clarity, all of these will not break your prayer.
That's correct.
What we're going to go through, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Next one. To turn over or brush away a rock is disliked, except if one does so once for prostration.
Yeah, so what that means is there's rocks in front of you. There's, something in front of you that's preventing you from prostrating comfortably. Obviously, these rocks are going to affect your head and, be awkward. So in that situation, you want to, move the things out of the way. So it's okay if that's the reason. If there's just, they're not harming you, there's no problems, and you're just not moving rocks around, then that, of course, is disliked. So that's what it says. It says turn over a rock is disliked. This is a rock, sounds like a big boulder or something. It's hasa. Hasa is like gravel, like small pieces of pebbles and stuff, probably a better word. Qalbul hasa. Pebbles probably better, except if one does so once for prostration. So if you do need to move them, just do it once, like get it done in one movement, and don't do several times moving around. That may break the prayer, because remember we did talk about excessive movement breaks the prayer. Yeah, one movement doesn't break the prayer, because especially for a purpose, it will help you to make your prayer better, inshallah ta'ala. So yeah, that's perfectly fine for a reason. Is disliked with no reason. Yeah, next point.
Cracking the fingers.
Yeah, when you're cracking the fingers, we say, the knuckles, when people, do their knuckles and, go crack, crack. During outside of the prayer, it's somewhat disliked as well. It's not a good habit. But in the prayer, obviously, it's just distracting ones from prayer. There's a hadith regarding it as well, I believe. So it's better avoided and disliked to do such. Obviously, if it's not doing the large amount of movement, so you're not moving your hands around and doing all this, it won't break the prayer. Like we said, these things don't break the prayer. You just, you got your hands here and just put them in shot, and you just went and you just broke a knuckle there, cracked a knuckle there and stuff. That wouldn't break the prayer because you're not doing massive movements. But if you got your hands out and started doing this in front of everyone, of course, doing that breaks the prayer, right? You're clearly not praying, you're clearly doing something else. So we're talking here about just doing it in your prayer, like quietly, softly kind of thing. That wouldn't break the prayer, but it's disliked. Yeah. Next one.
To interlace the fingers.
Yeah, so interlace the fingers. To put them together like this. So we don't, put our fingers together like this and, pray like this somehow. Not part of our religion, not in the hadith, There's a narration there, as mentioned by Abu Dawood, that Ibn Umar said that this is the prayer of those who earn the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we don't interlace the fingers. It's not sunnah. We know the sunnah is to either do bust, put the hand on the hand, or qabd, to hold onto the wrist, or the one, the right hand hold onto the left hand, or a posture similar to those. That's from the hadith and well known. So to start doing other things, obviously leaving the sunnah, that's makruh, and also there's hadith talking against that specifically as well. Bismillah, next one.
To pray with the hands on the hips.
Yeah, so it might sound weird. Why would you put your hands on your hips for? But yes, standing like this, rather than standing with your hands on in front of you on your chest or on your navel or below your navel, etc. You decided to put your hands on your sides, or not on your sides that hang down, because that's somewhat allowed. Some say it's okay, but here we're saying like put your hands on your hips, like almost like in this arrogant position. It doesn't seem like a nice position. Yeah, I mean, nobody would do that, but it's just clarifying that this is also a disliked act on posture in the salah. Yep. Next one.
Sitting in the style of iqah.
Yes, so sitting in the style of, which one? Did we jumped one? I think you jumped one.
Oh, we did, yeah. Sorry, turning the head around by turning the neck.
Yes. So looking with the eyes isn't regarded as disliked, because you might glimpse here and there, glance here and there, with the corner of your eye, you might catch something. It's not too bad. It's not good, but it's not considered disliked here, as you'll see. It's not mentioned. However, turning with your whole neck, yeah, that's disliked, right? Turning with the whole body might break your prayer if you move from the qibla. We talked about this. What breaks the prayer? If you're moving from the qibla by more than 45 degrees, will break the prayer. But if you just turn with your head, we mentioned this last time as well, it's not going to break the prayer, but it is disliked. So don't turn your head away from the qibla. Don't move your head around, glancing back and forth. This is very bad, right? The next one.
This one is sitting in the style of iqah.
Yep. So sitting with the style of iqa, the canine position, such as a dog with the buttocks and arms on the ground and the legs vertical and joint to the chest. So yes, pretty obvious how that is done. So you sit on your backside on the floor and you push up your knees to your chest. And your legs are like, obviously your knees are vertical. So when you push your legs up, your legs become like that. You push up your knees, you become like that, and you're obviously here, right? So this becomes a position where you're like this, with your buttocks on the floor. This is disliked. I mean, again, how do you sit like that in prayer for? You normally sit in the tashahhud position, which is the one mentioned previously. We call it iftirash, where you sit on your left foot and you erect your right foot. For the ladies, they do the tawarruk, which is when they put their legs onto one side, and you have your kind of thighs in front of you on the floor, and you put your hands on your thighs. That's the normal position. Why do you sit in this position? Like we said, we're just learning what is makruh. You may well need to sit in another position, maybe for medical reasons and illnesses, and some people may sit cross-legged in prayer, which is disliked as well. But if there's a need for it, it's allowed. And iqa is definitely not a normal position for prayer. It's actually quite maybe a unnatural position to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in. So yeah, better avoided and disliked. Yeah. Next one.
Placing the forearms on the ground.
Yeah, so spreading the forearms on the ground whilst in sajda. This is makruh for men. As we mentioned, for ladies, it is actually better for them to keep together and not spread out in prayer. Their prayer is built on satr, built on concealment and not exposure, and postures that are not the postures that are going to reveal their body and etc. It's the other way around. We keep together. So this hadith is specific to men. It's not general to women as well, as some may think, right? As explained by the ulama and their commentaries of Sahih al-Bukhari and other collections where this hadith is mentioned, right? We don't just take the hadith and apply it literally. We look at how it's understood and practiced contextually throughout history, and that's how we practice our religion. It's not just a literal interpretation or my understanding. It's the understanding of the ulama who contextualize, who actually give the understanding and why the understanding is there. Next one.
To roll up the sleeves of the arms is disapproved.
Yeah, so often you get the question. Some people even say, "Oh, it's invalid to have your sleeves rolled up. Roll up your sleeves. Let's roll up your sleeves like that, and go all the way up like that, like that. Well, is that allowed doing that? No, that's makruh. The Prophet ﷺ said, I've been told not to fold my clothing in prayer. So in prayer, you don't fold up your trousers, your shirt, your anything. You leave things hanging as they are normally. That is the sunnah, and therefore to start rolling up your sleeves is against the sunnah and therefore disliked. Yep.
To wear trousers only despite one's ability to wear a shirt is disliked.
Yeah, so obviously for men who don't have to cover the upper body, so if you cover to your navel to your knee, you've covered the minimum amount. So you've got a pair of trousers on that comes above the navel. Can you just play in them? Well, technically, yeah, it's valid. But of course, not wearing a shirt on top is a bit silly, and not, becoming and good etiquette. But if was one to do that, and maybe let's say just had a pair of trousers and nothing else available, nothing pure available, what do I do? Just wear the trousers, pray your prayer, and you've got a valid prayer. So yeah, in a situation where it's the only option, it's valid. But of course, in normal circumstances, you don't not wear a shirt. You don't leave a shirt off. That's just mentioning it though. That would be valid because remember we said in the conditions of prayer, males and females have to cover their aura, cover their reserved area, private area, and that for the men is the navel to the knee, right? So as long as that's covered, and even if there's exposure of other parts of the body, the prayer is valid. So it's not in the section of what invalidates the prayer, not wearing a shirt. It's in the section which is disliked because it's just not how anybody ever prayed, right? Never heard of the companions or the early Muslims or anyone pray without a shirt on because it's just unheard of. But it doesn't go against the technical rulings of validity. Hence, we can't consider it to be invalidating and so forth. It's disliked. Yeah. Hope that makes sense. Next one.
Returning the greeting of salam with a gesture.
Yeah, with the gesture. So we said before, repeating salam with words or initiating salam in your prayer. We're talking about in prayer, what breaks the prayer, doesn't break the prayer last time. We said salam will break the prayer. I verbally, right? I by shaking hands, we said, I think as well. Now when saying there's ishara, so somebody praying, somebody's giving you salam, you just raise your hand slightly there, as you just saw maybe in shot there, little flick of the hand, that's the ishara. You acknowledge somebody, right? Doesn't break the prayer that, but you shouldn't be doing that as well. It's not the place for greeting people or acknowledging them. So salam with the hand meaning, gesture to show you've recognized someone's with you. Then yeah, it doesn't break the prayer, but it's disliked. Yeah. Next one.
To sit cross-legged in prayer with no reason.
Yeah, we've done that one. So to sit cross-legged without a reason, disliked. Next one.
Having a braid in one's hair.
So I don't believe it. The aqsu sha'rihi, he has different interpretations of aqs. But really, what it means is not to have braids, because men can have braids, right? It's not normal, but they may well have braids, right? Or they may have long hair. So if one has long hair or braids and so forth, one is not to do aqs of the sha'r, which is more a case of tying them together, right? So I believe there's a hadith, maybe it's mentioned here. It says that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed by a man who's praying with his hair. The word is maq'us al-sha'ri. So he had maq'us. And he said that sha'raka yasjudu ma'ak, leave your hair to prostrate with you. So it means you're tying it up so it doesn't fall down naturally, right? So if so what you do is you'd get your hair, I haven't got a hair to show you, but you'd get it and you tie it at the top with a band or something to hold your hair in one place. Sometimes they use like gel like that, and not normal gel, but gel to like sticky substance to hold their hair, like long hair on top, rather than it come down and naturally flow down and so forth. Of course, women, they will tie their hair up, they will have braids, they will have a hijab on and hair covering on, head covering on, etc. For men, obviously, if they've got long hair, it'll come out of the side of the turban or whatever headgear they've got on, or if they haven't got any headgear on. It's makruh, as we're going to learn, not to wear some headgear for men. then it's disliked if that hair is not let loose and natural to perform the prayer with you, and rather you tie it up and stuff, right? So tying the hair up in prayer is disliked. Yep. Okay, next one, Hassan.
I'tijar is disliked in prayer. I'tijar is to tie the head with a scarf or cloth, leaving the middle of the head uncovered.
Yeah, so I don't know if anybody's come across this, but often some of the individuals at the masjid, they don't have hats and they don't tend to wear hats normally, or pray with a hat on maybe, but sometimes until they come to the masjid, they feel that they need to have a hat on, which is good. They should feel that respect, that wearing a hat is part of reverence for the prayer, for the act of worship. But instead of getting a hat and wearing a proper hat, they'll get a handkerchief out, right? And they'll tie this handkerchief around their heads, and you'll cover part of their head and it won't cover the full part of their head, right? So it says there that it's to tie with a head with a scarf. It says handkerchief, mindil is a handkerchief, or cloth, leaving the middle of the head uncovered. So it's not a full covering, right? It's not a bandana. So they make like a short bandana. It's not really a bandana, but they try to, let's get something on our heads. It's better in that situation not to cover the head, just leave the head uncovered, because you haven't got a proper head covering, head cap or anything like that. Just leave it. You don't have to have one on. It's good to have one. I was going to learn, but it's not good to make up this kind of thing, like is the prayer so important to you, or is that kind of lack of importance you give in the prayer, where you just stick a handkerchief on your head, right? So it's disliked. One shouldn't do that. Yeah. Okay, next one.
Holding up the clothes with the hands.
Yeah, kaffu thawbihi. So when people go into prostration, when people move around in the prayer, if they need to, it's okay, I suppose, right? Because you don't want to get stuck and feel awkward in the prayer, and sometimes you need to move around and loosen your clothing. That's fine if that happens once or twice, or is something that you need to do in the prayer, fine. Talking here about people who want to just grab their clothes and then go into the sajda, grab their clothes before they go into. It's kind of a habit some people have for no reason whatsoever. Then we don't do that. The Prophet ﷺ said we have been ordered to prostrate on 7 bones and not to tuck up the clothes and the hair, right? Not to ولا أن لا أكف شعرا ولا ثوبا. Again, so this explains the previous hadith well, not to put together the hair or the clothes, right? So hadith in Bukhari and Muslim. So this is not how we because what one of the reasons for it, Wallahu a'lam, is that in the olden days, not more so much now, having clothes was a major thing. Like the amount of clothes you had on your body literally indicated to your wealth, your status. So you maybe even see in images how the kings of the past had long robes, and that's why because having clothing in itself was just so expensive. Clothes were like cars in those days, right? Proper nice clothes, made, handmade, tailored. They weren't readily made. They weren't mass factory manufacturing. It was handmade, tailor-made. Cloth itself took a while to make. So the cloth itself was expensive, and then the tailoring. And so in the olden days, the tailors were a lot more highly valued and paid as well. It was a big profession. Obviously, due to manufacturing and machinery and mass production and the industrial revolution, that whole trade has gone very down. Tailors have, now I won't say become extinct, but obviously it's gone a lot less. So the more clothes you wore, going back to the point here, indicated your royalty, you're wealthy, and hence the wealthy and so forth. This is why the Prophet said that anybody who drags his garment on the floor, that's the sign of arrogance, and that's for the hellfire. That's why one of the reasons having long trousers and going below because people would do that. Literally, the wealthy would have long garments dragging them across the floor to show off, to show they got wealth, and so forth. So how does this relate to this? So the people who would have all these extra clothing and lots of clothing, when they would pray, they would gather their clothing together to show that we've got clothing, and then they'd go kind of like almost arrogance in the prayer, that way, especially because obviously prayer is to humble yourself before Allah. But sometimes when you stand in prayer, when you got a nice turban on, you got your new clothes on, really looking smart, you actually you forget about the whole purpose of prayer is to worship Allah and be humble, and you feel this sort of what's this word, right? You feel this sort of self, awareness, and how great I look in prayer. Look, my prayer is amazing because I'm look the best, and the whole kind of purpose of prayer is defeated, because it's not about showing your prayer to others, not about what you have on. It's about humbling yourself before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which has been missed out there, and conduct hasn't been done in the right way. So having, gathering your garments together and stuff could have been, I linked it to that personally. I'm not saying it is like that for everyone, but it was like that for in the past, though, the having a lot of the garments and holding it together just for the sake of, keeping it here, there, showing everyone in garments are here, is disliked, but it doesn't break the prayer or anything. It's just not good to do. But now, yeah, you should try and avoid it still. It's still not good to do. Unless there's a necessity, you're in your prayer and you've got some jacket on, and as you're going into ruku or sujood, the jacket's tight, so you just loosen it, you take the zip off without too many movements. Doing that kind of stuff just for helping you to move in the prayer is not a problem. It's just when there's no need, right? Bismillah.
Sadr is disapproved. Likewise, placing an item of clothing upon the body in a way that the arms do not pass through the places designated for them.
Yeah, so two things I mentioned, thank you, Hassan. Sadr here refers to garment hanging loose, which I don't have with me right now. So if you have like a shawl, a scarf, this could be applied to men or women who have the over their shoulders sometimes, rather than put it on our heads or have it just on the side on the floor. We put it over our shoulders, so you got two pieces of cloth hanging down on either side. This is sadr, okay? Two long pieces of cloth on either side, around your neck, for instance. And as you go into ruku, what happens? These two pieces go down and hang by your side. When you go to sajda, these two pieces of cloth, your scarf, they hang down and they hit the sides where your hands are roughly, and so forth. That is disliked, okay? That is letting the sides hang and so forth is disliked. You can wear a shawl, you can wear something around your neck, scarf if it's winter and so forth. What you should do is wrap it up, or wrap one side up at least, right? Because one side normally hangs down, sometimes the middle even, that's fine, okay? You wrap one side up, you put it around your neck, around your shoulder, and then you just got one side hanging down or a little bit hanging down, or, scarves these days nicely how they tuck it in the middle and stuff. If you've done that, then obviously that's normal, that's fine, that's not a problem, it keep you warm in the prayer. People wear scarves, men are allowed to wear those kind of scarves around their necks, etc. So yeah, that's fine. So when you leave it just completely open and hanging, and like a long kind of shawl or long kind of pieces of cloth hanging down just by your sides, they're not covering you or anything like that, just hanging down, that's disliked. And similarly, if you were to wear a garment that's got arms to put through, there's actually arms in it, it's not just a cloak on your back with no arms in it. You can wear a cloak, it's not a problem, but you've got a garment such as a jacket, and rather than putting your hands through the arms and wearing your jacket, you just got it over your shoulders. So you're praying with your jacket on your shoulders. And again, that's like this, this trying to humble yourself in the prayer. You should really be not, setting your garments in a way that's not really about, it's about style and design rather than about, humbling yourself before Allah. But if the garment is a cloak to put on the back, which, there are many kind of garments like that for men and women, then that's fine. If it's just that, if it's actually a coat, let's say it's got nice long arms and you decide just to put it over your shoulders and pray, no, put your arms through. I'm cold, yeah, put your arms through and cover your back as well, and cover, get away from the cold. So yeah, it's dislike to kind of have that kind of appearance, because it indicates to like more a form of relaxation style. You're out there and about, where you're supposed to be humbling yourself before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right, next one. Sorry, Hassan.
Sorry. It is disliked to tuck up clothes under the right armpit and fling the sides of the clothes over the left shoulder, or vice versa.
Oh yeah, or vice versa. Yeah. So this is something done actually in Umrah, in the Tawaf for men. They for the 7 rounds of Tawaf, they do what they call the ittiba'. So they uncover their right shoulder, right? So they'll have the ihram on, which is a piece of cloth. They'll take their right shoulder out, yeah, and they'll put the garment over this, so they cover the left shoulder, so they'll expose this area here. So you'll see this area exposed. This is my right, of the men exposed, whilst they're doing tawaf, the in ihram, they're using the ihram. That's called ittiba', that's sunnah. And during tawaf, it's perfectly fine. As soon as you finish tawaf, you may even notice that you might not have. They'll take the garment, so it'll be here, and they'll put it around their shoulder and cover their shoulder again. So only done for the tawaf. Not, I think most tawafs actually is done for, if not all tawafs. Yeah, ittiba' I think is done for every tawaf, or most. Yeah, the sunnah tawafs. That's okay for tawaf because that's part of the tawaf. Now you don't do that even if your shoulder's covered. So even if you've got like a shirt on, you don't get another garment and wrap it under one shoulder, underneath the shoulder here, under the armpit, and then over the shoulder, the other shoulder. That's not to be done in salah. That's not a style or something that's part of salah. If you want to cover your shoulders, cover both of them. Yeah, if you want to wear a garment and something on top, that's fine, as long as it isn't like maneuvered in a way that is somewhat done in another act of worship, but there's no such thing in the salah. Okay, so just be aware of that. I don't think anybody does that, but it's just mentioned there. Yep.
Reciting the Quran in a state other than standing.
Yeah, so the Prophet ﷺ prohibited Quran in ruku and sujood, and there's a clear hadith against this. So we shouldn't be reading Quran once we're in ruku, once we're in sujood, and even when sitting in tashahhud, there's no Quran. So reciting the Quran in these situations would be disliked. Yeah, it's not worth the place. Reading Quran is when you stand in the beginning of the prayer or at the beginning of every rakat. You read Surah Al-Fatiha and you read whatever you want of the Quran, short surah, long surah. And then when you bow, prostrate, tasbihat, tashahhud, there's no Quran. So it's disliked to now read the Quran anywhere else in the prayer. It won't break the prayer. But reading the Quran anywhere else in the prayer is disliked. Yeah, other than standing is disliked. Yep.
To lengthen the first rakah in a voluntary prayer is disliked.
Yeah, what that means is like due to a massive discrepancy. So to have a really long first rakat, and then short second rakat, unless there's a hadith that says the Prophet had this surah and then this surah in a prayer, and you want to follow that practice, and there might be some level of discrepancy, then that's fine. But generally in nafil there is a big leeway, so you can pray as you wish, but the idea here is there should be a balance in your prayer. You should do a first rakat 10 minutes, second rakat 30 seconds. That's not the balance in the prayer. That's not how the Prophet prayed, the Sahaba prayed. They didn't pray like this extreme polarization of 10 minutes to 30 seconds, right? Or an hour to 1 minute. They prayed, first rakat, as the Prophet's prayer is described, his nafil prayer is always described like this. He did the first rakat, which was long and beautiful and so forth. And his second rakat was standing was similar to his first. Even he did a short first standing, like some rakats, he did a short second rakat as well. So he would balance all of, and this is more the nafil prayers that are mentioned in the hadith. So he would balance his two rakat. So based on that, those are the hadith and just the way that prayer should be. Then it's to have a big discrepancy is not is disliked. Yeah, it's not good for that. Right. Yep. Next one.
Lengthening the second rakah over the first one in all prayers.
Yeah, so just generally, lengthening doesn't mean here being slightly longer. It means that being very much longer. So first rakat was, 30 seconds or 5 ayat. And then you went to the second rakat, all of a sudden, you've read 40 ayat, and it's taken you, instead of the 1 minute took you on the first rakat, it's taken you 15 minutes, 12 minutes. You've gone extremely long. What's happened here? Again, doing that all the time, or doing that in any prayer, whether it's nafil, fard, sunnah, is not good. It's an imbalance again. The better thing to do, the most common thing to do, and the practice of the Prophet ﷺ is where it's taken from, is to have a first rakat, and you can make it longer if it needs to be longer, and the second rakat is usually equivalent or slightly shorter, or sometimes slightly longer than the second rakat. There are some narrations where the Prophet read a surah and read the next surah, which was slightly longer, because sometimes the surah that comes after or another surah is like one line longer, one ayah longer, 2 ayahs longer. That kind of small amount isn't much. So that's what we find in the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. We never find the first rakat short and the second rakat long. Sometimes we do find a long first rakat and a much shorter second rakat as well. In some of the reports, the Prophet read this surah at the beginning in the first rakat, and read a short one and a second rakat. So, that's fine. But never do we find a short first one, a long second one in any report. So that should be avoided. Yeah. So short first rakat, second long rakat, it should be avoided. Next one.
Repeating the same surah in one rak'ah of an obligatory prayer.
Again, so the Prophet ﷺ always changed the surah in the obligatory prayers, and the nafil prayers, therefore, is not a problem. It's not disliked to repeat the same surah in the same rakat or in the next rakat. There's only one occasion that's reported with the Prophet ﷺ to show permissibility, to show it's valid. And the Sahaba was surprised. I think it was Surah At-Teen in Isha, I believe, come across the hadith, where the Prophet ﷺ read Surah At-Teen, so it's sunnah to read Surah At-Teen, Wat-Tini wa Zaytun, in Isha prayer. You may have heard that as well, because it's reported the Prophet read it in the first rakat. Then the second rakat, he read it again. Surah At-Teen in the second rakat, then the third, fourth as normal. When he gave salam, the companion was like, what happened to Messenger of Allah? You repeated the surah, meaning this has never happened before. What have you done? The Prophet said, yes, I know I did. Meaning, that's it. And he never did it again. So it shows us that it's not normal to repeat the same surah in the congregational fard prayer, i.e., the fard prayer, nafil prayers, and in between congregation, like Tarawih, for instance, you could repeat stuff, it's not a problem. But for the fard prayer, the Prophet never did. And the Sahaba were shocked. The Sahaba were like, what's happened? Did the Prophet not want to recite the surah? Did he want to repeat the surah? Did he forget? What's going on? He said, no problem. That basically it's fine. Don't worry about it. You've understood what I've done. And it wasn't reported again. It wasn't done again, meaning it's permissible. So if you were to do that, or if you only know one surah of the Quran, or you like a surah and you're repeating it, it's valid, but it's better to change the surahs in your fard prayers, because the Prophet ﷺ and Sahaba always read two different surahs in the first and second rakat of fard prayers. It's just, I don't think I've generally ever heard the same surah ever being recited in two rakats of a fard prayer with the imam. Maybe privately, some lads or families, they might read the same surah. It's not a problem. If you don't know or you're not confident, then fine. I think like the proper imam of masajid, I've never heard a repetition of the same surah ever, and that's the case. It's always been a tradition, and it's like some of these things are mutawarath, they call them, passed on generation from generation. The Sahaba did it, the Tabi'in did it, and it can't be missed, because why? You pray prayer 5 times a day together with all the Muslims in the local masjids, and that's a tradition that's been from day one. So a lot of the things with the prayer are just naturally kind of known, and we know that the same surah was never repeated in two consecutive rakats in an obligatory prayer by the imam starting from the time of the Prophet ﷺ all the way to our time. And the only report we have is the Prophet did it, and he was actually they raised the question why, what was happened, and they were told don't worry about it, it doesn't invalidate the prayer, it's perfectly fine, it's valid. So it's what it's showing is permissible in a sense, but they dislike it because it's not the normal practice. Permissible meaning here not invalidating of the prayer. So that's in obligatory prayers. The question now people are asking, and I've already mentioned earlier, but we'll repeat or we'll just reiterate, is if it's a nafil prayer, meaning if it's your sunnah prayers. So nafil here, remember we said earlier, when you say obligatory prayers mean fard wajib. When we say nafil prayers, we mean sunnah nafil. Okay. So in your sunnah prayers, in your nafil prayers, any prayers, it could be tarawih, it could be those sunnahs with the 5 daily prayers, it could be nafil you're reading at night, it could be tahajjud, it could be duha. In such prayers, the door is open, it's expansive. You can repeat the same surah over and over again in the same rakat. You can repeat in the second rakat. It's basically for you to worship Allah more. So if you want to increase, then repeat, and if you don't know much, then repeat what you do know. It's perfectly fine in the nafil prayers, right? Okay, Hassan, any questions on that?
No, just actually, if you are to repeat the surahs in your nafil or the sunnahs, you finish the surah, would you restart the surah with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, or just repeat the surah without Bismillah?
You could, yeah. So if you want, you don't have to, but you can. So if you want to read Surah Ikhlas, let's say 3 times before you do sajda in nafil prayers, it's fairly fine. You can do that, and you read Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim Qul Huwallahu Ahad all the way to the end, and then Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim Qul Huwallahu Ahad. Or you can just say, you don't have to say Bismillah at all. You can say Qul Huwallahu Ahad Allahu Samad Lam Yalid wa Lam Yulad wa Lam Yakul lahu Kufuwan Ahad. Qul Huwallahu Ahad Allahu Samad Lam Yalid. So you don't have to say Bismillah, but you can. It's probably better to separate them. Even if you wanted to read through 3 surahs consecutive, you don't have to say Bismillah between them. It's better to Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Qul Huwallahu Ahad Allahu Samad Lam Yalid wa Lam Yulad wa Lam Yakul lahu Kufuwan Ahad. Qul A'udhu Birabbil Falaq min sharri ma khalaq wa min sharri ghasiqin idha waqab So you didn't say Bismillah between them. It's not required. That's the thing. Is it recommended or not? Some said it's recommended, and some said it's just it's allowed. If you wanted to do it, do it. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. But yeah, so but for Taraweeh, you should be doing it because you're reading the Quran in Taraweeh. So there's a difference of recitation in Salah and the khatam of the Quran. So if your intention is to finish the Quran in Taraweeh, then when you read the Quran, it's got Bismillah, hasn't it? So you read the Bismillahs wherever they occur. So in your prayer, you will read the Bismillahs between the surahs or beginning of the surahs. Whereas if you're just reading Salah in your prayer, the goal is to read Salah, to read Quran, reading Quran in your Salah, in your prayers. The goal is to read Quran, so you could read a page, you could read 2 pages, you could read a sapara, you could jump, you could go from one page to somewhere else. It's not allowed, it's not liked, but so the goal is to read the Quran basically. So the nafil especially, is the door is open to reading a lot more things, and so there'll be a bit more leeway in the nafil prayers for that. Yeah, so you don't have to say Bismillah, you can just read on and on and on, and then just stop and prostrate. We should stop in a suitable position because some stops are not good, right? Hence it says don't stop here in the Quran, or it indicates to that. So you stop at the suitable place and then make your ruku. Okay.
Dislike to recite a surah and then reverse the order of the Quran by reciting another surah which precedes the one previously read.
Yeah, so again, you've read, so previously, meaning the order of the Quran copies, the Mus'haf. So we got the Mus'haf, Surah Fatiha is first, Surah An-Nas is last. So let's say you read, as I often do, read Surah Ikhlas, Qul Huwallahu Ahad, the first rakat. You can't go back. It's disliked. If you go back, it's valid. It doesn't break your prayer. But to go back is wrong, is bad. You should go forward. So you've got basically choice of Surah Al-Falaq, and that's it really, because it's going to say in the next point, you can't jump one surah, right? So if you do Surah Ikhlas, literally the only real good choice is Surah Al-Falaq, right? To jump to Surah An-Nas is going to be mentioned next as disliked as well. Jump one surah is not a good idea. But let's say go back a little bit. Let's say you read Surah Al-Fil. Surah Al-Fil. أَلَمْ تَرَ كَيْفَ فَعَلَ رَبُّكَ بِأَصْحَابِ الْفِيلِ. To go back and have Surah, let's say Al-Asr, or somewhere like before it is Al-Humaza, وَيْلٌ لِكُلِّ هُمَزَةٍ لُمَزَةٍ. That's going backwards, reverse order. No. You read Surah Al-Fil, the next surah is Surah Quraysh. Read Surah Quraysh. You go to Surah Ikhlas, which is towards the end of the Quran. You're going forwards. That's fine. That's how it should be done. You read from Surah Al-Baqarah in the first rakat. Let's say, a lot of will know Ayat al-Kursi. So you read Surah Ayat al-Kursi from Surah Baqarah. That's in the second surah of the Quran, the second juz, third juz. And you then read anywhere from in front of that. So let's say you know some ayahs from Surah Al Imran, fine. Let's say you know some ayahs from Surah Yasin, Surah 36, fine. Let's say you know something from right from the end of the Quran, fine. Surah Ikhlas again, it's fine. You're going in the order of the written, the Mus'haf, that's fine. If you read Surah Ayat al-Kursi and then the second rakat, you think let's go back to, I don't know, Alif Lam Mim in the beginning of Surah Baqarah, no, that's disliked. It's not going to invalidate your prayer, but it's not how the Quran was read by the companions. And we have a hadith here as well. It says that Ibn Mas'ud said, whoever recites the Quran in reverse, then he is in reverse, right? Meaning his heart is in reverse. He's going to mess himself up. So we don't go in reverse order. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, and like I said, it's not ever been practiced and mentioned. Hence Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, talk against it as a companion. So just want to get the Arabic of this hadith. It says, قال ابن مسعود من قرأ القرآن منكوسا فهو منكوس. Whoever reads the Quran in reverse order, he is reversed. أخرجه الطبراني في الكبير. The wording as in Tabarani is يا أيها الناس تعلموا فإن أحدكم لا يدري متى يحتل إليه فجاءه رجل فقال. So he said, so it's nice that he said, Abdullah Mas'ud said to the people, all people learn, for you don't know when one of you may come to an end in his life, or you may become busy, etc. So a man came to him and said, oh Abu Abdurrahman, have you seen a person who reads the Quran in reverse order? Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said, ذَلِكَ مَنْكُوسُ الْقَلْبِ. That person's heart has been turned around. Meaning, what is he doing? قال هيثمي في مجمع الزوائد في التفسير رواه الطبراني. So Haythami is a scholar of hadith who classified and talked about hadith. He said that this hadith was narrated by Imam al-Tabarani, and its narrators are thiqat, trustworthy. Ibn Abi Shayba narrated his Musannaf, and so did Abdul Razak in his Musannaf, right? Which is your early books of hadith, and early scholars of hadith. So they recorded this book, this hadith. Oh, it's a saying of hadith mawquf, as it's called, a saying of a companion. So again, that adds to the fact that we shouldn't go backwards. So the question now is, I chose to read Surah An-Nas in my first rakat. What do I do now? There's nothing left after Surah An-Nas. Min al-Jinnati wa Nas, second rakat, what do I read? You go back to Alif Lam Mim. So if you could read anything, so you could read anything before, even Falaq technically is after An-Nas if you go to the beginning, but you should actually go to the beginning and read Alif Lam Mim, Dhalika al-Kitabu la rayba fihi hudal muttaqin. That's what you should do if you end up reading Surah Ikhlas in your first rakat. So it's not a surah to be in the first rakat, unless you're actually finishing the Quran, for instance, or you are actually on Surah An-Nas, and in the second rakat, you're going to go back to Surah Al-Fatiha and Surah Al-Baqarah, Fatiha, of course, in general, and Surah Baqarah. So that's what you do if you read Surah An-Nas in the first rakat. Next question would be, well, I don't know Alif Lam Mim, Dhalika al-Kitabu la rayba fi. So then what do I do? Then just read anything, Ayatul Kursi, anything you know from the Quran, because you've just chose the end of it. You can't do anything but go back to something, right? So go back, but don't read Surah An-Nas in the first rakat in the first place, right? So you read Surah Al-Falaq in the first rakat, you got one choice left, Surah An-Nas, right? You read Surah Al-Ikhlas in the first rakat, Qul Huwallahu Ahad, you got one choice, Surah Al-Falaq, the next surah. Why have you only got one choice? Isn't there two surahs? The next point will clarify that. Next one, Hassan.
It is disliked to recite a surah, then skip the next surah and instead recite the one that comes after that.
Yeah, so that's an example is given there. It says, for example, to recite Surah Al-Ikhlas in the first rakat, and then recite Surah An-Nas in the second, thereby skipping Surah Al-Falaq, right? This is disliked. Why? It shows an indication of leaving out a surah. I'm jumping one, you can jump 10, 20, that's normal. The Prophet did that, sallallahu and so forth. But to jump one indicates a kind of, I don't like that one, or I'm not interested in that one. I'll jump to the next one after that, right? So leaving a gap of one is considered disliked. Yeah, so just try and avoid that. Next one.
Is there a minimum, i.e., for example, you don't skip one, but
skip two,
maybe
minimum is two. So if you start, so Surah and Ikhlas, you got no choice. Let's say that Surah Al-Fil, you've read, now you've missed Surah Al-Quraysh and gone to Surah Al-Ma'un, that's disliked. But you read Surah Al-Fil, you didn't read Quraysh, you didn't read Ma'un, you read Al-Kawthar, which is skipping two, or not reading two, that's fine. You've not abandoned those surahs, or it's not considered abandoning, it's okay. So as long as you don't read, as long as you leave a gap of two or more surahs, that's fine.
Okay. Intentionally smelling perfume.
Yeah, so in prayer, you shouldn't be, smelling perfume. Obviously, if somebody sprays something, or there is some fragrance, good or bad, I suppose, right? That goes, you don't want to, it's not your intention to smell and so forth. So that's not going to be disliked, it's not in your control. But literally, you smell something, you start, where is that? Oh yeah, I remember I put some fragrance on earlier, and you just take a whiff of it. No, you don't do that. If you put fragrance on before the prayer and you can smell it, that's fine. You don't go and search for it and deliberately kind of try to smell some perfume. It won't break the prayer because it's not an act. Just using your nostrils to inhale isn't going to break the prayer, but it's disliked if it's for no reason, or if it's for the purpose of smelling perfume deliberately. If it's natural and obviously it's around you, that's not an issue. Yep.
Fanning oneself with one's clothes, or a fan once or twice.
Yeah, so a fan in those days wasn't the electrical fan, right? So don't think talking about electrical fans. Fanning yourself with your garments, or some people, yeah. And if you had a fan in the olden days, like the paper ones, the cardboard ones, whatever they are, and if they fold up, if you had one of them, like you like that in the prayer. But obviously, if you kept on doing it, you're going to break your prayer because it's excessive movements. But let's say you had one and you just did it, quick one, just to give yourself like a stuffy, right? Just fan myself just to get a bit of air to the face. That's not going to break the prayer, because 1, 2, and that was it. It doesn't break the prayer. But if you're constantly doing this, it'll break the prayer. Okay, I can't just constantly be fanning yourself. Obviously, so what the question is, can I have a fan on and it be blowing at me? Yes, you can do that. In massages, they have fans in the ceiling fans. Often they have stand fans as well. The ones on the on the pillars they have, right, that rotate. So it's fine to have fans in a masjid and to have fan on you whilst you're praying. That's not you fanning yourself. In the olden days, they didn't have these, you know, alhamdulillah for the blessings that we have. They had, you know, they literally had these, you know, these woven, you know, in Pakistan, when I've been there, they have these, I forgot what they're called. The word is in my head, I just don't remember. They have these, they're made of like bamboo, and, you know, they weaved, like you weave a chair or you weave a basket. And the nice, you know, you just get it and you just flick it around, and that's how they fan themselves when the electricity dies out, right? There's no electricity, no fans. So they end up getting these out just to get the flies away and the heat away. You can't do that in prayer. You can't have one in your hand. Like, you know, when I get hot in prayer, yeah, you can't do that. Just leave yourself, pray. Somebody can fan you, I suppose, if there's no electricity. But yeah, you can't be doing that or using your hand or your garments to just, you know, do that. It's disliked, right? And excessively doing that would break the prayer. So it says there are one or two movements, once or twice. This is once, this is twice, right? That's not going to break the prayer, but prayer is broken, right? So hope that makes sense. Hassan, do you get that one, yeah?
Yeah, that's clear.
Okay.
We'll look at. I don't think we ever need to.
Alhamdulillah, yeah. Next one.
Turning away the fingers of the hands and toes of the feet from the direction of prayer during prostration and during other positions.
Yeah, so now in the prayer itself, we mentioned this, that, you know, the sunnahs of prayer is to make the fingers generally always of the hands and the toes when you're in prayer, to face toward the qibla. So to have them outwards or to have them inwards, or, you know, spread them out like they're too far spread out, just naturally, you know, generally towards the qibla is a sunnah. So to leave that and not try and practice that is disliked. Yeah, so we should avoid that. Sorry,
neglecting to place the hands on the knees during the bowing is disapproved.
Yeah, so obviously when you go into ruku, the question is, do you have to place your hands on your knees? Is that a requirement? It's not a requirement. It's not a fard or a wajib. It's a sunnah. So not to put your hands on your knees in ruku, what's the ruling? You've left a sunnah. That's makruh, right? The tanzihin level. So yeah, so, you know, don't do that. Why are you not going to put your hands on your knees in ruku? Ruku is the bowing of the back, right? So the sunnah though is that the Prophet would place his hands on his knees, and everyone, like, it's one of those things you never heard of anybody not place their hands on their knees in ruku. So make sure you do that. To leave that would therefore be disliked, but not invalidating of the prayer. Next one.
Yawning and closing the eyes in prayer.
Yeah, so two things I mentioned together. Yawning, obviously deliberately yawning, or, you know, making a yawn more than it needs to be, because sometimes it overcomes you. If it does overcome you, you're praying, and just carry on, right? So don't, you know, use your back of your right hand, just cover yourself over, yawn, and then put your hand back down, carry on praying. You should do that. As hadith say that when you yawn, then the shaitan enters through the mouth. So covering up is actually sunnah as well here. The hadith says here, it says, the Prophet ﷺ said, yawning is from Satan. If any one of you yawns, he should check his yawning. So first of all, restrain. You like, actually yawn there now as well, as much as possible. If any one of you during that activity should say ha, Satan will laugh at him. So to laugh at people yawning isn't good, as well, as you can see, and that is narrated by Imam al-Bukhari. So yawning isn't, if the scholars do explain, like I said, the commentaries help, that if it's out of genuine fatigue and tiredness, somebody's woken you up to go on a journey and you're just yawning throughout the journey, I'm not talking about that. That's humanness. You know, when you've had all day rest and you've overslept sometimes and you just, tired, I'm tired. People have this general laziness yawning, then that's the one that's not good. And you need to be a bit more active and, you know, conscious and aware, not just this lethargy that kicks into people, especially when they've eaten too much in Ramadan, right? So we need to avoid that. And then it says to close the eyes. So, you know, praying with the eyes closed, basically like that. Subhanakallahumma bihamdika wa tabaraka ismuka wa ta'ala jadduka wa la ilaha ghayruk. I can concentrate more, people say, right? The Prophets have concentrated the best, and the Sahaba concentrated the best, and nobody can ever match their prayers, and they didn't close their eyes. Okay, so you can't use that as an excuse. I can concentrate more, it's better for me, you know, because what happens is you learn how to pray with your eyes closed all the time, which first of all is a danger because you don't know what's going on around you, but also it's not the sunnah, it's not the way the Prophet ﷺ, the companions did their prayers, and the best of prayers, they looked at the point of sajda. Okay, and then make that your concentration point and practice the sunnah. of looking at the place of prostration and focusing on that and trying to take out the thoughts of the dunya and this, that, the other. They do say you can close your eyes if there's a need, like for instance, you're going to see something horrible in front of you, something very distracting, there's movement, could be something haram even that's going to go by, you know, in such you shouldn't really be praying in such situations, but you never know if that happens. Then of course, to avoid that, if you want to close the eyes and pray to help you avoid the negatives around you on occasion, not regularly, because where on earth are you praying if it's happening regularly, right? So the idea is to select a place where there's no distractions and then focus on the prayer, the point of prostration. Whereas sometimes you may have to pray, is, you know, it's not always possible to have everything in an ideal situation. So you may pray in circumstances where, you know what, closing the eyes here probably better for me. I'm just not going to be nice praying with my eyes open, or, you know, looking at everything around me and the things that are going on, the distractions. So if you close your eyes on that occasion, like, you know, one off or every now and then where it's suitable to maybe close the eyes, not for the prayer though. So the intention is not, I want to pray for the prayer, I'm closing. You know, the idea is that there's other things now that are causing you to maybe close your eyes or divert your attention. Then, you know, for that reason, you may close your eyes. Yeah, that's okay. That's not going to be like this, like, you know, look at that and pray, no, you know, or and so forth. Yep, next one, Hassan.
Raising the eyes to the sky.
Yeah, some scholars said this is disliked, some never. There's actually a strong hadith for it here. It says the Prophet said, "What is wrong with those people who look upwards towards the sky in prayer?" He then said sternly, "They should stop doing that, otherwise their sight will be snatched away from them." Bukhari hadith. But there are scholars who have interpreted that differently. But yeah, it's better to avoid. We'll stick with that. Next one.
Stretching the body in prayer.
Yeah, tamatti is, you know, when you wake up and you go like that. Might as well do it now, right? Like that, right? When you do that, so if you're in your prayer and you're like, oh, you know, stretching your body in prayer, that's disliked. It won't break the prayer as long as it's not excessive movement. As long as you're doing like loads of crazy movements. If you're just doing that, and then you go back, that won't break the prayer. But that's disliked. Don't stretch and, you know, crack your body during the prayer kind of thing. Just focus on the prayer. No, you know, do that before prayer. Do it after. Bismillah.
Minimal movement.
Yeah, so minimal movement is anything that's not a lot of movement, which we explained that what breaks the prayer is lots of movements, 3 consecutive movements. Like, you know, some of these were minimal movements. So a minimal movement is to stretch the body. Minimal movement is to fan your face once. It's disliked to that. So minimal movements, you know, is to move, is scratch your face and then go back, right? Minimal movements, you know, these kind of things won't break the prayer, but they're movements and they're not necessarily needed. So they're disliked. Yeah. Okay, next one.
Picking lice and killing it is disapproved. Also, to cover the face and mouth during prayer is disliked.
So the last one isn't nice. If you've got lice and you're killing them in prayer, that's not good. What's going on there, right? But yeah, if you've got lice or you see lice on somebody else, let's say, or somewhere, and you start killing them and stuff, obviously this is done with, you know, let's say there's done with a small movement and you crush it and, you know, flick it, and that not going to break the prayer. That couple of movements, small movements, limited. It's come under amal qalil, right? If it's done with a lot of movements, you want to kill something or you end up, you know, picking something and doing some crazy stuff, that breaks the prayer. That's a judgment we said you've got to make and be careful about. And not covering the face, the mouth, and the nose. So not having a garment which covers, you know, the nose and the mouth. Yep. So this dislike to do that, so to cover that, because it's going to affect the recitation. It's going to affect, you know, your you know, for ladies obviously that wear niqab, they'll be saying, oh, do I take my niqab off, so forth. For ladies, they don't have to wear niqab. It's a choice, you know, they have to wear the head covering and you know, the body covering. So they don't have to take it off in salah, they can pray with it on. But obviously for men and for women as well, I suppose, the recitation may be, you recite to yourself. So for men, it's the congregational prayer, the imam, I suppose, his recitation would be affected. It doesn't say that here. I mentioned that recitation. But yeah, if you recite to yourself, it won't affect anything. But it was obvious the Prophet and the companions, they never covered their mouth or their nose when they prayed, whether they're as imams or as followers. So it's not a practice of the prayer. However, you might think, oh, it's a really cold day and freezing and I want to cover myself. Yeah, fine. You know, obviously for weather reasons or whatever, you can cover. It's not invalidating the prayer. It's just disliked for no reason. So yeah, you know, better not to cover the nose and the mouth during the prayer. Next one.
Okay. So just on that one, obviously with the current situation now, inshallah, going forward, at some point the masjids will be reopened, but there's a possibility they may have some sort of condition on going to congregational prayers and stuff, such as distancing, face masks and stuff like that. So if you was to do that and have a face mask on during namaz,
I would say it's wajib.
because
So obviously this is normal circumstances, right? What's in the books, guys, yeah, unless it mentions something of an unusual circumstance, what we're talking about is default normal circumstances. So everyday life, no coronavirus, it would be disliked to wear a face mask, yes.
Mhm.
However, you're not say coronavirus, you're in a place where there's a lot of disease, in a polluted place, it's a filthy place, so you have to, that's where you, let's just say that's the case, then yeah, of course you could put your hand on your mouth and pray, you're like, I can't stand this, and I'm doing that in prayer. Well, you have to, otherwise you might faint or something, right? So in such circumstances you will take the necessary measures, and if that means, in this case during the coronavirus or pandemics, whenever they are, that wearing a face mask is recommended, or I would say wajib, right? In closed places, I think it's definitely beneficial to have these on, so you're not breathing in other stuff. The proper ones, because you can. I'm sure you guys have done research on face masks and stuff, right? Some are not worth it, and some are decent, and some cost a lot more, and this, that, the other. The good ones aren't really allowed. The way they suck, the good ones aren't really available. Sorry, because they really do stop all the mess from getting in, but they're hard to get, right? The quality ones, but that's another topic in itself. But yes, I would, if we are gonna start going back into society and in workplaces and in masajid, when that happens, then I would, personally, totally encourage that, face protection, PPE, whatever it's called, to whatever level is suitable, is worn, for everyone, and the more caution you take, the better. That's our duty. Allah has asked us to take the means and then trust upon Him, and not just to say we trust in Allah, who cares, and then tomorrow all of us are ill. But Allah decided it. Yeah, Allah decides everything, but He has asked us to take the means. So I definitely encourage taking precaution means. Masajid should have special, sanitary areas at the entrances. They should be thinking about how to, the shoes should be stacked where the door handles, keep the doors open, closed, what's going to happen. Somebody should be cleaning them regularly, wiping them down. So these, the masajid should be coming together. I'm sure that the Islamic bodies will be releasing kind of guidelines. So there's a few, obviously, major bodies that kind of are ahead of everyone, which is good. We need people to be ahead and issue kind of guidance for masajid to follow. Otherwise, some masajid may not be as clued up, the management to cover all bases. So we do need the advice and consultations and sharing information. So yeah, definitely, hopefully there's going to be guidance coming out at the right time for every area and sphere of life. Obviously, we're trying to go back to normality. This week has been, a big change for people in the UK, at least, if you're watching the UK. And in the next weeks and months to come, it's going to get more and more different and change. And I think the most important thing is the guidance, not on what's allowed and what's not allowed, because you can still stay at home, by the way, guys, even if it's allowed to go out, right? But when you do go out, what is the way to behave, right? Not just the government rules, but what is the actual scientific evidence and the best way to protect yourself. That's for you to research and look at the science websites rather than the government or media websites, right? We should be looking at those. If you think about it, it's a bit of advice. How much has actually gone to the real experts during this and look at what they said and what they advise and so forth? I'm sure some of us has. I think most of us just use media outlets whose goal is not, primary goal is not, I mean, sometimes they do have good intentions. I'm not saying they all got bad intentions, but their primary goal is not scientific and, sincere advice to their user base, for this pandemic. It's just making good stories and getting the hits and getting the reviews and the whatever ratings and all that, because that's who they are. That's who they've always been. It's not wrong either. That's part of life. People do that for a living, for corporations, for jobs. It's a pursuit that people want to do and go behind and go down that road. But my advice, the point I'm trying to make, is go to the right people for the right advice. Don't rely on the media outlets for these kind of things and updates. Really speak to the experts. If you know people in the field, speak to them, get them to recommend you websites and advice and so forth. NHS obviously itself being the primary source for most of us in the UK. But you can always ask your local experts, doctors, hospital workers, etc., because they'll have obviously had first-hand guidance and maybe more details and insights that you may not find on websites and stuff. So yeah, as a side note, Hassan, based on what you said, yeah, we've gone through all of that. But yeah, face masks during pandemics, whether you're praying or not, definitely recommended. Allah knows best. Yep.
Thank you. Jazakallah. Placing something in the mouth that prevents the recitation of the Quran.
Yeah, so placing in the mouth, obviously not while you're fasting anyway. So placing in the mouth while you're fasting is disliked. So if we're not fasting, because we're talking about prayer, then placing something in the mouth, like a piece of paper, a piece of plastic, it's disliked. Why are you doing that when you're praying, right? Generally, it's no point in it. But obviously, doing the prayer is going to affect the recitation. It's going to affect your prayer. So it's disliked to do that.
Prostration on the wrapping of the turban.
Yeah, so if you've got a turban on, and the turban obviously is wrapped around, so the turban is like a piece of cloth that is wrapped around the head. So you end up having 2-3 layers of cloth on your head. So the best thing to do is just to tip your turban up like this, right, when you pray, and so you've got a nice full forehead to prostrate on, right? That's even with the hat on, the same thing. But what people end up doing when wearing turbans is they end up going like really low, like this, right? Or a hat. It could be with the hat as well, by the way. The same ruling applies to the hat. So when you make a sajda, there's not much forehead left. There's just this, but we end up making sajda here, really, right? So your sajda now is on a piece of cloth that's attached to your head. It's on your hat, which is attached to your head, and it's not on this skin. So the skin's now not really there, touching the ground. Is that valid? First of all, it's valid, as we explained before, in what is breaks and doesn't break the prayer. So that is valid on this, but it's disliked. Why would you want to put another barrier? You've already got the carpet, you've already got things. You should put the actual skin on the ground as much as possible. That's the sunnah, but it's not invalid, right? I think there are opinions and from other ulama, other scholars, that it's literally I think it's the Shafi madhab, because I remember this. Why do I'm saying for is I was in a Jummah prayer once in Syria, in Damascus, and I was sitting more or less in front of the khatib, just maybe towards the left, actually, in the main hall. It was a big masjid, so it was probably like a few thousand people, and I was like 15 rows back or something, right? And at the end of the khutbah, and I noticed something, because a guy came in late, and you would have gone to another room. You wouldn't have come into this main hall. You'd gone upstairs or to the balcony or something, right? He came in late, and he was climbing over the shoulders of people, and he sat down, not too far from me, probably to the right, but close, because I noticed him. I think he went in front and to the front right, so I noticed him going past. And so when the imam finishes the khutbah, he had a go at this guy. So he did it nice and indirectly. They didn't go say, "Oh, why are you doing this during my khutbah for?" Right? So he said, he said very nicely, some of you come in the khutbah and you walk over people's shoulders. This is not the way of the sunnah. The Prophet said, when you come, don't walk with your shoulders. And the Prophet said, there's don't to go over the necks of people and stuff. Don't do that. Don't go their shoulders and necks. Sit down where the majlis ends. There's a space, inshallah, for everyone. And also, the people who have, and the Bismillah had his hat, he had one of those bubble hats on, really, it was winter time. And he says, also, those of you who've got hats on that are covering your foreheads, and he was Shafi, so he wasn't Hanafi, like Western Hanafi, but the opinion he followed was, those of you wearing hats that are covering your foreheads, your prayer is invalid. Sajda is not valid on a hat that's covering your forehead or on a piece of cloth. So make sure you put your hats back before you pray, please. Jazakumullah khairan. And he came down and he led the prayer after the khutbah. I don't remember the khutbah, by the way. I can't remember the khutbah, but I remember that incident from the khutbah at the end of it, because we're like, yeah, he's having a go at that guy that just coming over, looking at that guy with his hat on, with having walked over the shoulders of people. And I don't think he took it too badly. He was a nice guy. I saw him afterwards, and he was just a nice guy, very nice guy, like one of those generally funny, happy people. I was like, yeah, so what if he said it to me, kind of thing, right? So he wasn't one of those that, oh, he talked about me, and people are different, and he was a nice, bubbly guy. I remember that. Alhamdulillah. So going back to the point here, so covering the forehead with a piece of cloth, with the hat, with a turban, and prostrating on that is disliked in the Hanafi school. It's considered not a good thing to do, but it's not invalid. There are scholars, like we just mentioned, who have said that it's invalid. So be careful, and it's better to prostrate on your actual skin of your forehead, insha'Allah ta'ala. Is that something you knew about, Hassan? You that clear?
Yeah, but I mean, we'd heard of it, but it's all, you always, as you're growing up, going to the masjid and stuff, different people, you see the elders with the imams on and stuff. And,
Yeah.
some people, even these days, wearing, as you said, bob hats. Uh, some older people wearing bob hats, and the sajda, the foreheads are not actually covered. So people did it or didn't do it. So it wasn't. I didn't really think it was a big thing, but obviously, we're learning that you should have it uncovered is better.
Yeah, that's right. So we should have it uncovered. That's the better way, and not to allow it to cover your forehead. So wherever you prostrate, so if it's covering some of your forehead, you're prostrating on the rest. That's fine. But
Mm,
to cover the forehead fully, like we said, and then prostrate on that is disliked. It's not a good practice,
yeah.
and it kind of does go away from the proper way of praying, which is to put the whole concept is putting your head on the ground, right? I'll keep it clean with my turban or my hat. No, put your head on the ground. Obviously, in the olden days it was sand, it was mats, it wasn't as nice as a carpet. Now we've got carpets even, and we still don't, want to put our head on the ground, right? So need to
Mm,
humble ourselves a bit more, I think.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, next one, inshallah.
Um, to prostrate on a picture.
Yeah, so being a picture of a person, not a picture like it's a mosaic, like a lot of prayer mats are these days. Like a picture here of an object, of a person, of an animal, of your wildlife kind of thing. That's just like, it's not that invalid because you're prostrating on the ground, right? It's, prostrating on a picture isn't invalidating of the prayer, but it's obviously, that's what other traditions, let's say, do. It's not, we don't prostrate to objects in Islam, right? It's not doing that, but it's close to that. It looks like that. Let's say somebody could think, "What is he prostrating on the animal for? Or is he, can be problematic?" And it is problematic. So they don't prostrate on pictures or on carpets or cloths or something on the floor that's got pictures of human beings or living things, etc. Yeah.
Okay. To prostrate using only the forehead without having a valid reason with the nose.
We said this before as well. We said prostration is fard on the forehead, wajib with the nose, the bone of the nose here. So just to do the forehead and leave the nose out, it doesn't invalidate the prayer because that's the fard and that's the wajib. And if you've got an excuse, it doesn't mean anything. If you haven't got an excuse, you've left a wajib, right? And that's really bad and you shouldn't do that. So it's makruh tahriman to do that. If you did it deliberately, you need to repeat your prayer. If you did it accidentally, which I don't know how, well, actually you can, because some people just go and prostrate on their head and they come back and they don't put their nose on the ground. They just do it quickly as well. You should really make sure when you go, and this is an important point actually. I've seen this, so I reiterate this point, that when you may see people, they'll go into sajda and they'll put their head really on the ground with a nice sajda, but they won't touch a part of their nose on the ground. It's wajib to add that nose to the ground. The prostration is on this bone here, right, from the forehead, this part here, any area of that, and this as well. Okay, this bone here finishes about there, anywhere around there, right? That is, it could be even this part, right? Not the tip because that's soft. I said the hard part, so the hard part starts about here. Using myself as a prop, right? So as long as that's touching the ground, your sajda is fully complete. If you miss off this part, which some people do out of rushing or not thinking about it or even knowing it, you might see them not fully prostrate on their nose. They're missing out wajibat, which is a bad thing, right? They should be taught and they don't have to repeat their prayers that they've done like this forgetfully or unknowingly, leave them be. But for future going forward, make sure that every prayer is prayed with the head, the forehead, and the nose, part of the nose on the ground for sajda. Right? Hasn't you come across people that do that? They don't put their nose on the ground?
I think probably when we were younger and rushed through the namazes as kids, probably must have done many sajda without their nose hitting the ground. Uh, but I think, generally speaking, as you get older, like you said, it's probably almost impossible for someone to do a sajda without the nose touching the ground now.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right. So, alhamdulillah.
very low.
Bismillah, carry on.
Uh, next one, to pray on a road that people use.
Yeah, of course, don't pray in people's way, right? We talked about the sutra and taking a sutra, etc. Don't pray where people are going to pass by you, in front of you, etc. You're putting them at harm. You're causing the problem. So it's makruh for you to do that. Disliked for you to do that. Yep, next one.
To pray in a washroom or in the vicinity where a person relieves himself, such as a communal toilet.
Yeah, so it doesn't literally mean in the room. It means close to the room, right? Um, in the vicinity, yeah. So yeah, well, basically in the shower bathroom, do you pray in there? No, you don't. But literally, if the part of it was pure and you prayed there, would it be valid? Yes, but you're not going to do that, okay? Just because it's pure, it doesn't mean that the area is pure. You're going to prostrate. It doesn't mean it's okay. The whole room is not used for that. It's used for another purpose, right? So don't pray there, or even next to it. Like try and keep away from that. Just outside there, pray on the other side of the house or the room or a distance away. If there's a wall between it, that's fine, I suppose, right? Talking here about just outside, or if you're outside in the open, then avoid places where people relieve themselves and pray away from those places. As long as there's walls between things, that's the main thing, right? Housing is like that. Masajid are like that, right? So don't pray in the vicinity or where maybe the breeze is coming from that place, right? So this is part of masjid design and home design, right? Don't have rooms across from the bathroom where ventilation and so forth is not best, etc. It's important, to respect the prayer and the place of worship, not having any bad smells or anything like that close by. And of course, the whole etiquette is to burn bakhur, not in while fasting, but burn fragrance, the incense, and generally have nice fragrance and cleanliness, and that's more conducive to worship and the angels and the blessings coming down, inshallah ta'ala. So yeah, so stay away from filthy areas, detestable areas. Yep. Next one.
Prayer at graveyards is detested. Additionally, to pray on land without the permission of its owner is disliked.
Yeah, so praying in certain places is not good, just because it's not a place of prayer. The Prophet ﷺ actually mentioned, as I can see here, it's there as well actually in English. I'm looking at the Arabic as well. So it says in Imam Tirmidhi narrates the hadith in the chapter on Babu ma ja fi karahati ma yusalli ilayhi wa fihi, the chapter on what is disliked to pray in the place and towards the things in front of you, like the picture we had. And that's from Abdullah ibn Umar. It's hadith number 346, and it's translated there for those of you who got the English. It says the Prophet ﷺ forbade the observance of prayer in 7 places: a dunghill. Dunghill means basically a waste site, right? Slaughterhouse, graveyard. What's the next one? Sorry. The middle of the path, a bathroom, and a watering place where camels drink water and sit. So the what was the word for that? I want to know the word for that. Ma'atin al-ibal, yeah, ma'atin al-ibal, where the camels are used, the resting place, because they're going to be doing stuff. There's animals there and stuff, so don't pray there. But the guy looking after the camels, he'll pray around there, right, or somewhere close by. So try and avoid these places. Additionally, to pray on land without permission of its owner is disliked. Some scholars regard that invalid. To go to private land, not public land, not masajid, not homes. If you go to somebody's private land, like using a piece of land that's private. It even says it in in the UK here, it says you are now entering private land, meaning you shouldn't be going there without permission. Then what's ruling of praying in that land without permission? Obviously, permission is there, it's okay. In the Hanafi school, it's disliked to do that because you're now trespassing, but the prayer is valid because your prayer is not connected to trespassing. Trespassing is a demeanor, a misdemeanor, and prayer is prayer. Other scholars have said no. Once you do that transgression, it's no longer valid to pray on that land without permission of the owner. So as long as you're a trespasser and don't have permission on private land, your prayer will be invalid in private land. Some scholars went to that. I won't call it extreme, but that opinion that that punishment for trespassing, right? So there's a sin there already, trespassing, going people's land without a need, without permission. Maybe if there's a need, by the way, you can. So if you're like, you have to leave somewhere else for danger to go to that land. I had to come here because the land was collapsing there. There was a flood there. There was this there. We had to come here. That's fine. And you have to pray there for that reason. That's fine. But we're talking about for no reason. No. But like I said, books give us the normal circumstances, unless they state it's a unique circumstance like illness and so forth. It's normal at the moment. You don't have a reason to go. Then you shouldn't be in somebody else's land. And if you do pray there, it's disliked, but valid, right? Okay, the next one, Hassan.
To pray within a short proximity of filth.
Yeah, so close by, meaning, the filth is there, but you're here. Same thing, it's disliked. Next one.
To resist the urge of urination or defecation in prayer, or to resist the urge of breaking wind is disapproved.
Yeah, so when you have the need for the restroom to, relieve oneself, then you should stop the prayer and go. You shouldn't be praying, it doesn't break the prayer though, right? So if you, like fight through that urge and finish the prayer is valid. It's disliked. You shouldn't have done it that way. The person who holds back the defecation is called haqib, and the person who holds back his urination is called haqin. Haqib, holding back the defecation need, and haqin, these are Arabic words. I've got a note here on mine. We learned the words. They say you should go and relieve yourself, then come back. I remember one of our teachers. You learn some nice things from your teachers. He was in the class and he said, "I've got to go," and he didn't say, "I've got to go to the bathroom or for a need or stuff like this." He said, I've got to remember the words that he goes, "La budda an adhab usawwiba ra'yi," which means I've got to go and sort my opinion out. Usawwiba ra'yi means like sort my mind out, like think correctly. We were like, "Where's he going?" And then he looked back at us and goes, "You know what I mean, right?" We're like, "Oh, he's going to the bathroom, right?" But it's an amazing way of saying it. I rather than saying, "I'm going to go I'm just going to go sort my, thinking out." In other words, in English we say like that. Let me just get my opinion proper. Like, let me get my thinking proper. I'll come back. Eh? What do you mean? Is there something wrong with you? No, going for a call of nature. In other words, obviously we say that, don't we? We need to go use the restroom. We say, right? He was even more subtle, euphemistic than that. He said, "I've got to go sort my mind out." It's in Arabic. It sounds nice. So we brought you. Like, wow, what a beautiful way of putting it. And he went and came back, and that was it. We had a laugh and a joke and talk with each other while he was gone, and he came back after a few minutes, and the lesson carried on. So that was for a lesson. So he went and came back, right? So for prayer as well, you can't really teach if you're really in that state, and it's difficult for you. Take 5-10 minutes out, go there and come back. You can't learn as well as students. If they're in that state, it's not going to be helpful. You can't concentrate. You'll miss half of what the teacher's saying, and then you'll be like, "Oh, I didn't understand the class," or "I'm behind now." You just say to the teacher, 5 minutes, go, "Yeah, of course, teachers understand you need to sort your mind out, right? So go and come back." In the prayer, same thing. You can't really focus on the prayer and pray when you got that, you're fighting that, right? So, be aware of that and avoid that as much as possible. Next one.
To pray with excusable filth upon one's clothes or body is disliked, unless one fears he will miss the prayer time or the congregational prayer. Though if one does not fear this, then it is preferable to remove the filth. Yeah,
so again, something that would have been discussed and was discussed in our previous classes that are not online, but on the chapter of purification, about pardoned amount of filth on one's clothing. So somebody's got a small amount of filth, it's pardoned. It doesn't affect the prayer. Large amount, what's small, large amount? Like I said, you need to refer back to the discussions on purification in the book, and you can read back over that. There's a section on that in the book. So let's say you've got a small amount, a little bit of filth, urination, blood, whatever. It's attached to your clothes, it's stained your clothes, but it's not a massive amount. It's not a preventive amount. It's a pardoned amount, right? Like I said, refer back to the book for the exact amounts and measurements. So you're now going to pray. You can pray with it, but it's disliked to pray with it, okay? So you shouldn't really be carrying even a small amount of filth in prayer. Even though it's excused and pardoned, even that should be removed before you start the prayer, okay? That's the ruling. Then it says, except if you're going to fear that you're going to miss the prayer. If you're going to miss the prayer and carry a little bit of najasa, which is disliked, get the prayer done. You don't want to do a qada of a prayer. Or there's a jama'ah going on, there's a congregation, and it's the congregation, and you want to pray in the congregation, that's the masjid congregation, etc. And if you go and remove this filth and come back, or change your clothes and come back, you'll miss the congregation. Perform the congregation. That small amount, that pardoned amount of filth is no longer disliked in those situations of missing the prayer time or missing the congregation. If that's not the case, right, then if you're praying by yourself and you realize during your prayer, I've got najasa, what should I do? It's not going to prevent the validity of my prayer. You see on your arm, oh look, there's najasa there. What should I do? It's not. That's okay. I can pray with that on. You can carry on with your prayer, right? Dislike, like we said, slightly disliked because it's pardoned. It's not going to be major dislike, but it's recommended to stop your prayer, go clean off even the small amount, and come back and pray with a fully clean garment. Okay. So hope that makes sense. Did you get that, Hassan?
Yeah, I mean,
So
we've
even if
been
you've
through
got
that.
so even if you've got a small amount and you're in prayer and it's not a congregation, you're not going to miss the congregation or the time, you're just normal, you're by yourself, then actually, you know what? Let me stop my prayer, clean it off, come back and pray from scratch. That's not required though, because it's a small pardoned amount. Yeah. So you were going
Yeah.
to say?
No, we're going to say we've been through this, I think, as you mentioned, in the previous section for purification. So
Yeah,
I
that's
think
right.
I've got
Yes.
my notes somewhere.
You've got your notes on there. Brilliant, right? So everyone should be like Hassan, right? Be wise, be like Hassan, learn your fiqh. Yeah.
Yeah,
Attend
I'll
classes of sacred knowledge. Okay,
I'll
next one, Hassan.
take notes.
Take
Uh,
note.
Pray in disheveled clothes.
Yeah, disheveled clothes. The thiyabul bidla. Bidla means like, your pajamas, rough clothing, just like those clothing you relax in at home, stuff like that. It's not for prayer, is it? You wouldn't go and stand before a job interview or, visitors and notables visiting you. You and you have guests and so forth. You get ready for others and you get ready for society and for just being presentable, not to show off anything. Then when it comes to the prayer, we should have to have respect for the prayer and not show. It's almost a form of arrogance in itself. I don't need to be, I can pray in these clothes. I know lack of reverence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when we go and pray in our pajamas and so forth. You should really wear normal clothes are fine. Just normal clothes. You don't have to be the best of your clothing. It's good to wear nice clothing for prayer as well, but just normal clothes that you wear every day. You're happy to wear them in front of everyone and everywhere, and it's your normal clothing. And that differs from person to person. So somebody you might think, oh, he should wear better clothes. Leave him alone. His own standards, his own. Maybe he should, but it's not for you to decide and tell him. But if they are actually wearing really trodden down, your old tatty clothing, is basic, and they can afford and they have got the ability to wear nice clothing and so forth, that's dislike. That's not respecting the prayer and reverence of the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Allah is one of the Sahaba said Allah is more deserving that you present yourself to him, not kings and job interviews and so forth, right? So we should present ourselves to Allah in the best of ways. Yeah. Next one.
So Shay, just following up from that one quickly, sorry.
No worries.
Fajr namaz generally is these days is quite easy. You're probably already awake, but sometimes you're asleep, you wake up tired, you do wuzu, you've got your sleeping clothes on, they're not dirty or anything like that. Would it be better to change, or could I know? Well, you could pray in it, but
yeah, so good. First of all, let's make a point here to everyone. First of all, praying in your pajamas or your sleeping clothes, as long as they are pure, is okay, is valid, right? Like you just said, they're clean. So people think they have to change when they wake up, and they don't. It's valid. But the ruling is makruh. But like you said, I mean, I'd say what you said. If that's the case for somebody who's been working all days, come home late, you just got to sleep, and you're waking Fajr, you're shattered at Fajr, and then you want to go back to sleep after Fajr. In that situation, for somebody who's like really fatigued, I'm not talking about everyday situations where just people are tired because they've been spending all night on PlayStation and stuff like that. Genuinely, somebody who's been working hard all day, putting the food on the table for the family, and you may be well fatigued. And people do labor, most of us now on office work and stuff like that. But they are genuinely people who are extremely tired and fatigued. And then for Fajr, they alhamdulillah, the fact they want to pray Fajr is amazing, and they should try to. I mean, if they possibly can, to change slightly, maybe wear a nice cloak on top, or change quickly and change back. But we have to be understanding of their situation. They're probably very, very fatigued, and just praying Fajr in itself is a mammoth task. The fact that they've done that much should be commended. And if they happen to that situation pray in their some form of pajamas or something like that, I mean, I wouldn't say okay, yeah, it's fine. But I would say, we should be a bit more kind and considerate towards that, and not critical of that. But generally,
so
somebody
instead of
who's sorry.
instead of changing, you could just maybe throw a jubba on top.
Yeah, I mean that's what. To be honest, that's what I saw a lot of people do when I was in Syria. We'd go for Fajr, and a lot of people come for Fajr in Syria. The masjid would be half full, to be honest, right? Especially on Fridays, be more or less more than half full sometimes, depending on the size of the masjid and where it is. And a lot of the people would come, and you could see their pajamas hanging out from their cloaks and robes. But they could be nice robes, nice cloaks, nice jubbe. But underneath, you could tell they may have pajamas on and so forth. I didn't do that, alhamdulillah. But we used to put our thobes on and go and change, alhamdulillah. I probably have prayed in my pajamas every now and then to think about it. Probably have. It's human nature to do that, so you should try and avoid it and not do it. But sometimes you're tired, you want to go back to sleep. It is the case, so you want to just quickly pray and go back. If that's the case, and you have a genuine reason as well, I'd say, then there's no blame on you. If it's just something you've got into a habit of doing, you're just being lazy, you're sleeping late for no reason and giving yourself a harder fajr, you're missing fajr, when you're praying it lazily, you're praying it quickly, you're praying it in your pajamas, then you need to reassess your sleeping timetable. And honestly, one of the things in lockdown for me, I know it's Ramadan still, but one of the things that I learned was going to sleep early is really good, because you got nothing to stay up for sometimes. You're like, you know what, let's just go to sleep. So I'd recommend getting into the habit of going to sleep early, even though it is Ramadan and people getting up early for the suhoor, and then some people are staying up basically for it and then going to sleep and so forth. Going to sleep early is generally the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and a good habit. So let's try and get back to our Islamic kind of morals, principles, practices. Yeah.
I think it's just for summertime, Shaykh. It will get difficult
Yeah,
outside of Ramadan. I think summertime
that's
will
right.
just get.
I agree with that. I personally, for most of Ramadan, on a few days I was really tired. I went to sleep, but most of it, I have been staying up till Fajr. But yeah, the days I've gone to sleep have been better days, simply because you're tired, you get to sleep, you're fresher for Fajr, you're fresher for the rest of the day. It's better still to go to sleep and wake up. People think, I'm only going to get 2 hours sleep. I said I've done it. I did a few nights like that. Now it's better. Those few hours are good. Alhamdulillah.
Okay, next one. To pray with the head uncovered. To pray with the head uncovered is disapproved, except if one does so out of humility and humbleness to God.
Yeah. So the question now, does covering the head, is it a sunnah, or is it something that should be done? And what we find is that covering the head was a practice done by the Prophet ﷺ and the companions. Some have argued, I think incorrectly, that it's a tradition of the Arabs and they covered their heads and that was what was happening, and not everyone has to. And look, it's not nobody says an obligation. Nobody says an obligation. Yes, however, sorry, the Zohar has entered. However, we find hadith on the commendation of covering one's head, on the turban and the rewards and so forth. And we find the Sahaba encouraging it as well. So because we've got a body of text, the same for the beard for men, for instance, it was a tradition of the Arabs generally, but there's hadith saying to keep beards and to, be different to others. And the sunnah of the Prophet is to keep a beard. It's not just a cultural thing, right? So yes, it was part of the culture, but it's also something encouraged by the Prophet ﷺ in hadith, that praying in a turban and head covering is extra rewarding for males, we're talking about here, etc. So for that reason, yes, it does come under a rewarding act, an act which should be practiced by Muslim males. It's not just a cultural thing, as some have. I think it's a trend now for people to say this and then and get everyone applauding. Oh, finally somebody said it. Finally somebody's told everyone it's just a cultural practice. It's not part of our Islamic teachings and so forth. This is misunderstandings. I don't know where people get these from. If you look at the tradition of ulama throughout history, not about them wearing the turban or wearing the hat, just what they wrote about it and the hadith regarding this. And there's a good hadith, one of the best books regarding this is, I think, called al-Di'ama of Sheikh, I think it's Muhammad Ja'far al-Kattani, Muhammad Abdul Hayy al-Kattani, I can't remember which one. Al-Di'ama fi Sunnati Lubs al-Imama. It's got a whole book on this, on wearing the turban and the hat and the rulings and so forth. So we need to study first of all and look at the tradition and the history and the hadith and so forth, and not just jump on the bandwagon when we hear somebody say this and how good it sounds and so forth, right? People's nafs and what we consider today to be today. It's okay not to wear a hat. If you don't want to wear a hat, that's fine. Okay. But to say that it's not a sunnah, it's not something that is recommended and rewarding, is also problematic as well, because we have so many traditions, hadith, practices, and works, Islamic works on this, that it's just not feasible or plausible to kind of allow that to just be said without, certain, stipulations. What do you mean exactly, right? So, I would be careful about that, right? So yeah, so if you leave wearing the hat, it's somewhat disliked because you're not wearing something that's part of the prayer, part of honoring the prayer. And if you look at it, I think in tradition, in any tradition, most of the time, the people praying cover their head. When people come to places of worship, even non-Muslims or non-believers, any place of worship, they tend to feel like they cover their head or show respect in this way and so forth. I think there's a connection with that, and worship, without a doubt, right? I think it's somewhat intrinsic, I'd say, in human being to feel that, unless it's for taking the hat off is for tadallul, and to become, as it says here, humbleness and humility before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is the case. I mean, think of Hajj and Ihram. You're humbling yourself, you're taking off everything, you don't have a hat on, you're not allowed to put a hat on, by the way, right? So that's a form of humbleness, right? And so forth. So if you're not being lazy, in other words, and just can't be bothered to put a hat on, but you feel like you stand before Allah, that's your hal at that time. To be honest, by default, you should feel humble in a hat, but in a turban, hat, whatever it is. But in some cases, it may be that your emotional state, let's say, is in the state where you feel like not wearing a hat today is probably better for me. I just feel shamed before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if it adds to the humbleness and submissiveness in the prayer, then obviously that's a good thing. You don't want to. And by the way, tip the balance on the other side. Some people, they put a nice big turban on, nice hat, looking good, and what's going on there? You're going to pray and you think, look how special I am with my turban, right? Look, with my hat, I look better than everybody else in the prayer line. I'm the best prayer because of my hat, You've got the most diseased heart of all, the way you're thinking, right? At least they're not bothered about other people and how they look like and what, they're just getting on with their prayers, and you're just worried about your beautiful new turban and how, and this is human nature. We all are attached to our belongings and our appearances, but the idea isn't to do that. So there's a flip side to the coin as well, right? So you need to find this balance and humbleness. That's not in abandoning it. That's not going to extremes in it. That's finding a balance, right? And the middle ground. Cover your head, but use it to humble yourself and revere Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Next one, Hassan.
Next one. Offering the prayer in the presence of food the one has desire for is disliked. Furthermore, anything that distracts the mind and reduces concentration is disliked.
Yep. So, this again, Ramadan probably comes in for Maghrib time. Oh, there's food, it's distracting from prayer, I'll eat. Obviously, don't delay the Maghrib prayer for food. I mean, everybody now, I think, because we're at home, takes the 10-15 minutes at least before they pray Maghrib. I think very few people probably have one day and then pray and then have the meal or some food. So, in that situation, yeah, it probably is better because you've just been fasting all day. Your heads all over the place. You want that. It's getting later and later now for us in the UK. It's gone past 9 p.m. now. Everybody's like, oh, we hit 9 p.m. We've still got 10 fasts plus to go, kind of thing. Oh no, so yeah, give yourself some time, but it doesn't mean here, sit around and have a full meal and gup shop, have a little chit chat. And spend 45 minutes, an hour before you pray Maghrib. So Maghrib at 10 o'clock, no, that's really bad, right? The Prophet said, my ummah will be in good until they delay the Maghrib prayer, right? Hatta yashtabik an-nujum, until the stars come out, right? So delaying the prayer, Maghrib prayer, is a sign of, the ummah going into a bad state of being, right? A bad state. So we should be not delaying the Maghrib prayer out of all the prayers, right? That's the worst one. All the prayers have a leeway to be delayed anyway, more or less. Apart from the Maghrib prayer, it needs to be prayed ASAP. And with Ramadan, you shouldn't be delayed for Ramadan or iftar, right? It should just be given. And think about it, when you're those of you who've been to Makkah, Medina, and even when I was in Syria and some countries, at Maghrib Adhan, they give you time to open your fast, right? I have never seen that time extend more than 10, maybe 15 minutes, 10 minutes, I think normally. Sometimes it's 6, 7, 8 minutes, but they give you time. So some people pray Nafil at that time, which is disliked in the Hanafi school. Some people just do zikr at that time. Some people open their fast, they have water, dates, bread, and then they get ready for the salah and the iqamah occurs, right? So that amount of time, 5-10 minutes, is perfectly normal and fine. Any other time, just try and avoid food and any prayer, basically, right? But if it's there, it's disliked then to pray whilst your heart is in the food. You're praying a Zohar, you can pray a Zohar in half an hour. The food's there. Just eat your food and then pray a Zohar afterwards. Your mind is going to be in control and, not disturbed or busied with other things. So that's the general rule then mentioned after. Anything that takes away from your khushu and submissiveness is to be avoided. So distractions, noises, sounds, images, people, children, if they're going to distract you, it's not going to distract you. Bismillah, pray. If they are going to, then be aware of these kind of things. So yeah, what we'll do there is we'll stop there today, inshallah ta'ala. There's still many dislikes, not too many, but we'll stop there today, inshallah ta'ala, if that's okay with you, Hassan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, alhamdulillah. So thank you to everyone for joining us, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.